What if someone could predict your next thought, not by reading your mind, but by planting the conditions that make that thought inevitable? In the early 1980s, inside a little-known behavioral research division tucked beneath a university in California, a group of scientists began working on a project that would never be officially acknowledged, not because it failed, but because its implications reached far beyond anything they had intended to study. Unlike earlier experiments that attempted to influence people through obvious means, this project focused on something far more subtle and far more powerful. The idea that human thoughts are not as spontaneous as they feel, but instead emerge from patterns that can be studied, predicted, and ultimately controlled. The experiment began with a simple premise. Every decision you make, every idea you have, is influenced by a chain of small, often unnoticed triggers. These triggers could be environmental, emotional, or even based on previous thoughts. If those triggers could be mapped precisely, then theoretically it would be possible to guide a person toward a specific thought without ever directly interacting with their mind. The researchers didn't want to insert thoughts. They wanted to create the exact conditions where a specific thought would naturally appear, as if it had been generated freely. Participants were recruited under the impression that they were taking part in a cognitive performance study. They were placed in carefully designed rooms where everything, from the color of the walls to the arrangement of objects, had been deliberately chosen. At first glance, the environment seemed ordinary, even comfortable, but every detail had a purpose. The position of a chair, the angle of light entering the room, the subtle background sounds, all of it was part of a system designed to influence the sequence of thoughts forming in the participant's mind. During the sessions, participants were asked to perform seemingly simple tasks: choose between objects, recall memories, solve problems, or describe their feelings. Meanwhile, the researchers tracked patterns in their behavior, searching for consistent links between environmental triggers and mental responses. Over time, they began to notice something remarkable. Certain arrangements of stimuli consistently led participants to arrive at the same conclusions, even when they believed they were making independent choices. Encouraged by these results, the team refined their methods, increasing the precision of their environmental adjustments. They learned how to layer triggers in a specific order, creating what they called thought pathways. These pathways didn't force a person to think a certain way. They gently guided the mind step by step, leading it toward a predetermined conclusion. To the participant, the final thought felt completely natural, the result of their own reasoning. It had been carefully constructed long before they were even aware of it. But in reality, one of the most striking demonstrations of this system involved a participant who was asked to choose a single word from a list of unrelated options. Unknown to him, the environment had been subtly arranged to favor one specific choice. The lighting emphasized certain letters, background sounds carried faint phonetic patterns, and previous tasks had primed his mind with related concepts. When the moment came, he selected the exact word the researchers had predicted. When asked why, he gave a confident explanation, completely unaware that his reasoning had been guided from the very beginning. As the experiment continued, the researchers began testing more complex scenarios. They moved beyond simple word choices and began influencing opinions, preferences, and even emotional reactions. In one session, a participant was guided through a series of neutral decisions that gradually led to a strong emotional response. By the end of the sequence, the participant expressed a clear preference for something they had previously shown no interest in. When questioned, they defended their choice passionately, convinced it reflected their true feelings. The deeper the researchers went, the more unsettling their findings became. They realized that the human mind doesn't generate thoughts in isolation. Instead, it builds them from a continuous flow of inputs, sensory details, past experiences, subtle cues that are often processed without awareness. By controlling those inputs with enough precision, it was possible to shape the outcome of the thinking process itself. Not by overriding the mind, but by becoming part of the process that creates thought. The most disturbing moment came during a final test designed to measure the limits of predictability. A participant was placed in the controlled environment and given no instructions at all. He was simply told to sit and think freely. Behind the scenes, the system began introducing a carefully designed sequence of triggers, each one influencing the next stage of his thought process. After several minutes, the participant was asked to write down whatever thought had just come to mind. When the researchers compared his response to their prediction, the match was exact, not similar, not approximate, but identical. When asked how he arrived at the thought, the participant hesitated, then smiled slightly. "It just came to me," he said. "I wasn't thinking about anything specific. It just felt right." That response confirmed what the researchers had begun to suspect. The sense of spontaneity, the feeling that thoughts appear freely and independently, could be an illusion, a carefully constructed illusion built from countless unseen influences working together to produce a single outcome. The project was quietly terminated soon after. The official explanations cited ethical concerns and the potential for misuse, but internally, the reason was far more troubling. The researchers had crossed a line they didn't fully understand. They had demonstrated that it was possible to predict and even shape human thought without the person ever realizing it. And once that knowledge existed, it couldn't be undone. The data was sealed, the team disbanded, and the research disappeared into fragments, absorbed into other fields where its origins would never be questioned. But the core discovery remained, hidden beneath layers of complexity and time. Because if your thoughts can be predicted with precision, if they can be guided without your awareness, if the feeling of free thinking can be recreated artificially, then the question isn't whether your mind is free. The question is, how much of what you think was ever truly yours to begin with? And if someone could design the path your thoughts follow, would you ever realize you were walking